We're now live on YouTube, members, and we'll be starting in a few minutes, okay?
Welcome to all the members of the council as well as a member of the public who may be watching online. Before the meeting formally begins, our priest couldn't make it today. We are sorry today without prayer. So we are going to start it. You can pray in your own. Sorry about that. Some reason he couldn't make it. Tonight, meeting will be broadcast live and recording retained on the council's YouTube site. Therefore, I will presume everyone consent of its happening. If you do not consent this, then you should leave the meeting. There are a number of councillors who will joining us remotely tonight by Zoom. These members will not be counted as formally being in attendance at the meeting for the purpose of the section 85 of the Local Government Act 1972. However, their virtual attendance will be recorded in the minutes under item 1. The members in attendance virtually will be able to speak at the meeting, but won't be able to take part in any votes. So we'll start from item number 1, apology for absence, attendance. Are there any apologies for the absence?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have received apologies for absence from councillors Nijar, Alexander, Teague, Sahota and Kohli.
Yeah, there's apologies for Councillor Zissimos as well.
Declaration of any interest?
Yeah, there is Sanjay Kohli as well.
Yeah.
Apologize. They said they mentioned.
Minutes of the meeting held on 13th of December. Are the minutes of the meeting held on 13th December 2022 agreed as a correct? Okay, so mayor's announcements. It's a sad announcement. Past mayor and former councillors Novels Pointing died at Wednesday, 1st March, age 93 years. He was a councillor for 23 years, representing the Hangarhing ward from 1971 to 1978, and then the Hangarlands Lane ward from 1978 1994. November was a mayor of Ealing in 1982-1983. Councillor Thiewel from the Labour Group would like to say a few words about Normal, please.
Madam Mayor, thank you very much. Madam Mayor, Norman Pointing was appointed mayor in 1982 and was mayor for the year 82 to 83. And that is the year, Madam Mayor, when I was first elected to be a member of this council. And I sat in this seat as a backbencher where I sit again after 41 years. But although it's 41 years ago, there was a very different feel to that period, different era. There was a lot of traditional stuffiness in that period. Conservative members used to wear blue gowns, and conservative female members used to wear hats in the chamber. The chief executive was called town clerk. So it was a different era, but despite the stuffiness of the period, Norman Pointing was a very different sort of mayor. He was very charming, very courteous, and he always wore a smile on his face when he talked to you. And his conduct as a mayor was very judicious, very magisterial, very even-handed. But above all, and this is what I remember him for, nothing remarkable, but the fact that, you see, he was not a divisive figure. And we were talking about 82, the early years of Margaret Thatcher, when national politics, local politics was becoming really very, very divisive. But he was very even-handed and very pleasant to talk to. And this is why, although there's nothing remarkable about it, I felt after one meeting in the mayor's parlor over drinks, as a backbencher, it was all very new to me. I didn't have a lot of confidence, but I plucked my courage and went to him. And I said, Mr. Mayor, you are a very dignified mayor. I'm really impressed. And he laughed. And then he said he was very pleased to hear that a Labour member had felt able to come to him to say that. And I think he said means a lot to me. So, Madam Mayor, that is my memory of past Mayor Norman Pointing. He was a very decent councillor, great public servant, served the council for 23 years. And while we mourn him, may I say that may he rest in peace. Thank you very much.
Yes, Madam Mayor. I have to say is that nobody in the Liberal Democrat group was around at that time when he retired in 1994. I think the eldest councillors in our group is Councillor Malcolm and Councillor Ball, who's been here since 2002. However, can you pass our condolences to his family from the Liberal Democrat group, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, as Ranjit has said, Norman Pointing was a very genial chap, always had a smile on his face, very helpful to me as a new councillor, if you can imagine such a thing so long ago. His big strength was as a ward councillor in planning. In those days, almost everything went before planning committee, every small extension. And if the committee voted against a planning officer's recommendation to pass a planning application, the councillor who moved the recommendation to refuse had to go and defend that recommendation in front of the inspectorate without any support from the council officers. Norman Pointing's proud record was that he never lost a single appeal. He knew his background too well. He was a wonderful councillor. I'm sorry he had such a, at the end of his life, he suffered from Alzheimer's. I'm sorry he had a sad end to his life. He was such a nice chap. We will miss him greatly.
Thank you. So we can stand for 1 minute for the silence, please. Please be seated down. So I send my condolence to Councillor Tinsas on the recent passing of his mother in February. We're very sorry. For those you who celebrating the Buddhist Sangha Day on 6th of March, which recommends the Buddhist first sermon, I hope you had an enjoyable day. The other one I have that everyone observing the Jewish Forum 6th or 7th March early this week enjoyed this festival. It's known as a Feast of Lots and observed by Jews to recommend the being saved our persecution in the ancient Persian Empire. For those of you celebrating Holi, this is today, Hindus festival, and Hola Mahalla 6 today, 8th March. I hope you enjoyed the day. Hindus celebrate the Holi festival to welcome the spring. At the same time, Sikhs celebrate the Hola Mahalla festival by watching and participating in the material art, paradise, and activities. 2 days International Women's Day. Congratulations all the women. And nearly events have been taking place this week to celebrate it. This morning, I attended the University of London, West London, to celebrate women in policing and Ealing's Expo, when I met many successful women. Since the last council meeting, I led a commemorations of 1 year since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which took place on February 24th of February. It is important that we support the people of Ukraine, both those remaining in the country and those that have been the refugees in their struggle for democracy, however we can. So I'm walking the raise funds for my charity, Heartling Hospital Support Group. 2.25 miles sponsors walk from Greenford Hall to the cafe in Pirshanger Walk will take place on Wednesday, 29th of March. I would be delighted if you could join me. Please email me to further details or your pledges amount, your continued support for this good cause is appreciated. I'm holding fundraising events at a Pillar Restaurant on 15th of March. If you haven't bought a ticket, please do so. All the proceeds will go towards my Merrill charity. So please do. That's right. I'm a bit sad because so many sad news. Sometimes I'm emotional, like Princess mother is gone, other Ukraine people. I went to London in the church. You can't think because the children, they are crying, all the mothers, they are crying there. It made me cry there. So when I'm reading something, it's all that comes in my front of my eyes. So the item is number 5, petition from the members of the public. There is any petition from the public? No. Petition from the member of the council? None. Question from the member of the public? No. No. A question from the member of the council? Sorry. Have you seen? We can wait.
Okay, yeah, I've got a question. Are you Joe? Oh, yes, come down, please.
Okay.
Yeah. Handing out answers from the heart.
Might be.
Lovely, right, good evening, everyone. My name is Joe Steen. I'm a resident in Ealing. I live in a Victorian terrace, which is quite typical of the area, and I've got a question to ask, so I'll go ahead. Okay, great, thank you. So my question is, will Ealing Council follow in the wake of other councils and support electronic vehicle adoption by allowing residents to run a 3-centimetre cable across the pavement? Sorry. So, okay, I hope that's better. So my question is, will Ealing Council follow in the wake of other councils and support electronic vehicle charging by allowing residents to run a 3-centimetre buried cable across the pavement so residents can charge from home? The reason why I asked about the 3-centimetre cable is because it will mitigate any kind of health and safety concerns around, tripping. It will be aesthetically pleasing because, you're not going to have cables running over the road, over the path. And crucially, it will allow residents to charge their cars from home.
Thank you, Mr. Steen, for the question and for coming to the council meeting tonight. You're very welcome. In terms of electric vehicle charging points, I think this is a real success story for Ealing, and we'll hear later on this evening, because I think there's a few questions on the agenda on this topic about our great ambition to roll out 2,000 electric vehicle charging points across the borough, which we're already well on the way to delivering. However, I do recognise that for some residents, having access to your domestic supply is cheaper. And if you don't have, of course, a front garden or driveway that you can use, then that is an issue. That's something that you're unable to access currently. However, what I would say is, you said in your question that some boroughs are adopting a policy of allowing residents to run a gully from their domestic supply onto the street. In fact, what we've seen is a small number of authorities running trials of this. So it's not something that's been adopted across the board anywhere as yet, because it is something that there are a lot of issues with and that haven't yet been cleared up. Of course, we know electric vehicles are emerging technology and the charging is also emerging technology. Who knows what might happen in the future? But at this point, what we're looking at is the trials that are taking place in a couple of boroughs. In particular, there's been a trial in Oxfordshire with their gully system, where they've looked at something similar to what you have mentioned. Now, there are still some health and safety issues with that. For example, if you've got a few people on a road beside each other who all want the gullies outside of their homes, so that can cause some issues with, repeated wiring across the repeated gullies across the pavement. There's also issues around maintenance. So, for example, who is responsible for the maintenance and for putting them in? If utilities come along and need to dig up the road, do they need to put the gully back in? Does the council need to put the gully back in? Or does the householder need to put the gully back in? But the most important issue really, the biggest kind of thorny issue is the ownership of the pavement outside your home. So if a resident was able to put a gully outside their home, does that then give them the right to park outside their home? We know there is parking stress in the borough, and we know that there is many roads, particularly with Victorian homes like your own road, where there is parking stress. It would be very difficult for us to say that you had a right to park directly outside your home because you've got a gully system in, and then other residents couldn't park there. Now, Oxfordshire have found this an issue. They've done some preliminary work on looking at how people are finding the trial, and they have found that 47% of users found that the gully was blocked by another vehicle 10 or more times in the past 2 months. So people still weren't able to access it. And they said when this occurred, they would use the public chargers like the ones that Ealing is putting in across the borough. And also, very disappointingly, only 39% of residents who wanted a gully said who had a gully said they would be willing to share it with other users. So it is something that really develops this kind of ownership of the pavement issue, which we really, I think, in somewhere like London, perhaps they can deal with it a bit more in kind of rural Oxfordshire, but I think in somewhere like London, we can't really allow some residents to say that they own that bit of the road and they have a right to park there when other residents on the street don't. So that's some of the findings there. However, what I would say to you is we do accept that this is emerging technology, as I say, and as a result, we've been working really closely with the group of residents. They came to us and they were people who have electric vehicles themselves or are interested in buying electric vehicles. And they came to us to talk about issues like this and discuss how we could move forward looking at a range of different options that might help residents in the borough. And we invited them into the council. We've now had 2 workshop meetings, officers, myself, and residents talking through different options for how we could extend the range and offer of electric vehicle charging for residents in the borough. These residents are really, really constructive. And I have to say, they brought pastries to the last meeting. They brought croissants, and we had a really good workshop session where we all sat around and went through all of the different technology that's currently been trialed throughout the country. One of the things we're looking at is Trojan technology. It's sort of like batons that come up out of the ground and you can link them on a road. So you could have 10 or 12 of them on a road. And we're looking at potentially rolling that out in a couple of roads in the borough to see if that works. I know you've previously been asked to be involved in that group. And I know you've as yet been unable to take up that invitation, but you would be very welcome to come together with us and work with those residents that are already involved. As a result of those discussions, we've agreed with those residents that we will also do a survey of our electric vehicle charger users using the access that we have through our providers like Liberty Charge and Source London. So we'll be surveying them to ask them how they're using our charging points at the moment, what they want for the future, and how we can make sure that we're keeping up with, and in fact, being at the forefront of changes in the technology.
Thank you. Thank you. You got the answer. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, I wasn't suggesting that I'd take ownership of the pavement. I mean, I would see it as a, almost an opportunity for Ealing Council to apply a similar practice to dropping the curb, right? I mean, in my view, it is very similar. You can charge people to put in a cable channel, and it is as simple as that. But yeah, happy to participate in that. I didn't realise that invite had been extended, but happy to participate. So yeah, thank you.
Yep, I just thank you very much for that, and I look forward to sharing croissants with you.
Thank you very much for coming. Thanks. So we'll continue our meeting now. Question from the member of the council is only 30 minutes to talk about this one. So I will say councillors, spread to councillors, Manro, please.
Thank you, Madam
It's
Mayor.
only 3 minutes.
Oh, no, it's just a question. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I wasn't prepared for 3 minutes.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Can the portfolio holder provide an update on how the council is progressing on providing accommodation for homeless households in the borough?
Thank you, Councillor Brett. Yeah, I have 3 minutes. I understand. Look, there are too many households in Ealing that are currently homeless. We have over 2,300 families currently in temporary accommodation. We as a council are doing everything that we can to ensure that everyone in Ealing has somewhere they can call home. The impact that homelessness can have on a person's life chances are massive. And as a council, our goal is to help our residents to thrive and achieve their full potential. Just recently, the leader and I went to visit the newly acquired 31 temporary accommodation flats at Aspect House in Acton. That's 31 high quality homes for 31 homeless households, all of whom will have now the opportunity at a fresh start in life. Those flats play an important role in ending the council's reliance on bed and breakfast accommodation, which isn't appropriate for many of the families who find themselves there for much longer than we'd like. The council's internal property purchase scheme has helped us to purchase over 150 homes, and we expect this number to continue to rise. The council has also leased modular housing units on 4 sites in the borough, providing over 100 self-contained homes, and we are continuing to work on looking at alternative sources to increase the provision of temporary accommodation. Ealing has one of the highest rates of homelessness prevention in London, helping households at risk of homelessness to either stay where they are through target interventions or through finding them alternative accommodation. We know we have to maintain our focus on this, but we are proud of our record. But we can't lose sight of how we house these families into permanent accommodation in the future. In terms of building new council homes, we have pledged to deliver 4,000 genuinely affordable homes up to March 2026. If we are successful, this would represent a significant increase on the 2,700 homes delivered in the 4 years leading up to March 2022. The delivery of 4,000 genuinely affordable homes in the next 3 years will be through a combination of new homes delivered across our estate regeneration projects, new homes delivered by our wholly owned housing company, Broadway Living, new homes built by our registered providers, our partners, and the application of planning policy to deliver affordable homes on private developments. The large majority of these homes will be available for let to people on the council's housing waiting lists. The council and Broadway Living together have secured over £143 million in GLA capital grant in the 2018-2023 programme for the delivery of affordable homes, which is one of the largest grants allocations made in the funding programme to any local authority in London. The council and Broadway Living have also together secured £109,500,000 for the next GLA capital funding programme 21 to 26 to deliver over 1,000 affordable homes and will contribute to meeting our 4,000 homes target. We're also working hard for our residents in the private rented sector, expanding our private rented property licensing scheme from 3 wards to 15, helping to tackle rogue landlords and protect our most vulnerable residents. We have plenty to be proud of in terms of housing delivery, and we plan to keep delivering for all our residents. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Does anyone from the Labour group have a supplementary question?
Does the portfolio holder share my concerns about the rising number of rough sleepers in the capital, which is brought on by the Tories' refusal to abolish Section 21 no-fault eviction after a brief reprieve during the pandemic, inflation, and the rising cost of living?
Madam, please.
I share Councillor Murtaza's concern about the rising number of rough sleepers in London. The inflationary crisis and the rising cost of living that the Tories have brought down on the hard-working British public with their self-inflicted 7 weeks of economic chaos, co-joined with the refusal to abolish Section 21, has resulted in one of the sharpest rises in rough sleeping in living memory. Rough sleeping is up 34% in England in the last 12 months, and even more concerningly, first-time rough sleeping in London is up by 29%. In Ealing, we're doing great work to reduce the number of rough sleepers in the borough. We've already seen a reduction in the number of rough sleepers in the borough, and funding has already been secured to support and accommodate 100 rough sleepers, many of who've already been placed. Over the cold snaps the country has experienced during the winter months, the council provided warm spaces for those sleeping rough in the borough, with our outreach team carrying out extra shifts during these periods to ensure that the offer of a warm place to sleep is given to as many rough sleepers as possible. We are continuing our work with the homelessness charities and community groups to ensure that rough sleepers in the borough are given the proper support and a route off the streets. We have successfully commissioned the provision of 11 supported beds and 8 supported long-term accommodation units with St Mungo's. Our goal of ending these rules surrounding the no recourse to public funds is also key. The last thing that rough sleepers need is to be forced out back onto the street because we are not able to help them due to the no recourse to public funds. We are committed to ensuring that all those who are rough sleeping in a borough will have the offer of a safe and secure place to rebuild their lives. Our work in Ealing continues to shine a light on the Tory inaction and incompetence. While the Tories continue with policies that put people out on the streets, in Ealing we are giving rough sleepers roofs over their heads, supporting them back into the workplace, and giving them an opportunity at a fresh start in life.
Thank you. Does anyone from the Liberal Democrat group have a supplementary question? The second, yes. Councillor Harris, yeah, Councillors Manro, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I note that the council leader has already given some public comments to the questions I want to ask, but I will ask it as I've submitted. So we have seen that John Lewis has a consultation on a very big development on the current Waitrose store. Very big development with 3 towers, one of them being 19 stories. So the question was, in the pre-application consultation, was the council giving clear advice and clear specific guidelines according to the local plan?
Thank you, Councillor Hirsch. The proposals for the Waitrose site in West Ealing have been in development since I'll ask you to listen to the date, since January of 2022. And the process of offering pre-application advice is still an ongoing process. That advice has so far been given to the John Lewis Partnership in line with the Council's Development Management Programme from 2013, the 2021 London Plan, and Ealing's Tall Building Statement from January of last year. The John Lewis Partnership are fully aware of the new tall building policy and site-specific guidance for that Waitrose site that has emerged from the Reg 18 consultation. The recently published draft new local plan from November last year is very clear on the design principles for the site, where the guidance is for buildings between 7 and 13 stories. However, the John Lewis Partnership have so far, despite many discussions with me and officers from our planning department, decided to ignore the advice given to them regarding the heights of the buildings in the proposed development. There is a legal obligation for us to consider proposals on their merits, and this extends to applications for tall buildings. The Council has been very clear to the John Lewis Partnership on how we approach proposals for tall buildings. They must adhere to 3 clear pieces of guidance: deliver exceptional public benefits, be deliverable as a scheme, and not cause harm to the local environment. The John Lewis Partnership have also failed to codify a commitment to providing 35% affordable housing, and they have indicated that any affordable offer would be at much lower than this. My fellow council will surely agree that the proposals on offer under the current scheme are disappointing, to say the least. Now, if Councillor Hirsch would like to tell me us about her magical planning policies that would allow the Lib Dems to see into the future, foresee problems with sites, and advise developers using yet unwritten planning advice, then I would welcome such an elaboration, because the local plan didn't come through till 30th of November, and we were talking to them beforehand. In the meantime, Labour will continue to engage with our residents as we did for the local plan. Our consultation on the new local plan involves thousands of residents' responses and truly embodies our commitments to working openly, transparently, and inclusively with the residents of Ealing. Getting their input to shape the new developments across the borough is key to ensuring that potential developments are providing the social benefits that our residents deserve.
Thank you. And does anyone from the Liberal Democrat group have a supplementary question? Okay, go ahead.
I appreciate that the plan was fairly recent, but also so is John Lewis's website, promoting this huge building. So they clearly have so far disrespected the council new plan. So can you give us guarantee that the council will not be soft on them and actually insist they will adhere to the new local draft plan and will also offer affordable housing and not just luxury flat?
Sorry, Councillor Hirsch, I'm not sure you understand the law as it stands. We have to give planning advice in line with our policies. When they came to us earlier in the 22, I asked you to listen to the date. The local plan hadn't yet even been published. So we had to give advice based on the policies currently in force. And as you may, and some of your planning colleagues in your would understand, it's a draft local plan. As it moves through the process, then the planning committee can give it more weight. For therefore, at the moment, it's only a draft until it actually goes through the whole process through Regulation 19, and then an inspector looks at the plan. It then becomes much more forceful. So at the moment, we have to manage that application in the proper way, and we will give advice like we have done, and the leader has done publicly as well. But I think you misunderstand about how the planning system works. We can't just be soft or hard. That doesn't work that way.
Thank you, Councillor Mehro. Councillor Young to Councillor Costigan, please. Councillor Young, please.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At the last council meeting, I asked if the recent proposals to pedestrianise Bond Street, High Street and Springbridge Road were implemented, how would traffic travel from north to south Ealing? I was told that there are no such proposals. Councillor Young should not believe everything he reads on the internet. Given that I read those proposals on the council's website as part of the supporting documentation for the new local plan, please could the portfolio holder tell me which parts of that documentation I should and which parts I should not believe in?
Costigan, please.
Thank you, Councillor Young. As you've said in your own question, I did actually answer this question at the last meeting, so I'm not quite sure why you're spending your time re-asking it again, unless, as my colleague has just said, you're contributing to upping our recycling figures in the borough. We're already the second best in London for recycling, so this can only help us, so thank you for that. But in terms of looking at your question, as I say, I did answer it the last time. We have no plans to pedestrianise Bond Street or any of the streets that you've mentioned. However, we do have plans to roll out more play streets in the borough. They're a great idea. Residents love them. Kids love them. They've been really successful, and we're going to make sure we have more of them. We do have plans to roll out more school streets in the borough. We already have 17. We have 4 more been implemented this term. They also have been a huge success. And of course, we do have plans to revolutionise both Southall and Northolt when it comes to active travel, spending millions on both of these towns to make sure people can cycle, walk, scoot, and make a difference also not only to our climate action priorities, but to our priorities for the health and well-being of our residents. Now, of course, when we look at transport schemes in the borough now, we have used our Travel in Ealing charter. We spend a lot of time consulting with residents about how they want to work with us on transport programmes in the future. So it was very much consulted on with local residents. We now have an approach to working with residents, which is all about co-design. So we start with residents, we start with what are the issues that you want us to deal with in your area. We sit down with them and then we look at potential solutions. That is the way that we work in Ealing. That is the Travel in Ealing charter. Now, I understand if he wants to spend his time asking questions that have already been answered, wasting his time asking questions about things that are never going to happen, then that's absolutely down to him. I expect he will come to the next meeting and ask questions about what if the Tories win the next general election? What if Liz Truss becomes Prime Minister again? What if Boris Johnson runs in Uxbridge and South Ruislip? All things that are never going to happen, but it's up to him. We're going to focus on the things we're actually doing.
Thank you. Does anyone from the Conservative group have a supplementary question?
I thank the portfolio holder for not answering my substantive question. Can I ask a supplementary question, which is, are the proposals to de-designate areas of metropolitan open land in the local plan real, or are they just a nightmare?
So thank you, Councillor Young. So not only are you asking questions tonight that have already been answered, you're also asking supplementary questions that aren't supplementary questions. They're completely different questions for completely different cabinet members. But, you know, of course, if again, that's how you want to spend your time tonight, that's entirely your decision. I'm sure your residents will be delighted that you are doing the job that they elected them to do, to do. It's entirely your decision how you operate as a councillor. My colleague, Councillor Manroe, has been leading on our consultations on the local plan through our Shaping Ealing consultation. This has been a massive and very comprehensive consultation exercise. We're really at the very beginning of this process because the local plan is all about looking at the inevitable change that is going to come to Ealing in the next 15 to 20 years, as it's going to come across London and across the country. But what we want to ensure in Ealing is that we have our residents at the forefront of the change that will happen so that we have the power when it comes to change, and our residents are in the driving seat. We want to look at ensuring that the rules and regulations that we have in Ealing are actually stronger than the rules and regulations that we get on a London level and on a national level. And that's what the local plan is all about. Now, like I say, we are at the very early stages still. So we're looking now at the evidence base. So this first stage, Regulation 18 it's called, we've actually been looking at the evidence across the borough. So do we have the right infrastructure in the right place for the changes in population, the changes in technology, the changes in working life that we're going to see over the next 20 years? As part of that, we've looked at we're starting to look at our green spaces, but a lot of the work on green spaces is not going to happen until the next stage, when we can look at all of the green space across the borough and how we're utilising it. At this early stage, we've looked at the metropolitan open land designations in the borough, and we've also looked at other designations. We've been very clear that the right designation for any piece of land is the designation that fits it best. If you don't have the right designation, then at planning, and when it goes to the government planning inspector, you will lose. I recently had a meeting which included a representative from the London Wildlife Trust, who very much backed Ealing Council's perspective on this and totally agreed with us that you need to look at every piece of land as it stands up against all of the different definitions of green spaces and make sure that it is designated in line with the designation that fits it best. That is agreed by the professionals both inside and outside of Ealing Council. As I say, we're still at the early stages though, and there is lots of room for people to, there has been lots of room for people to respond to this early first stage of the Shaping Ealing consultation, and we will be looking at all of the resident and other feedback that we've had when we move to the next stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Hamidi to Councillor Costigan, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can the portfolio holder provide an update on how many electric vehicle charging points we have in the borough?
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. Electric vehicle charging points are obviously a hot topic this evening, as we already had a question from a member of the public on this. But I'm delighted to say that so far we've installed 450 on-street charging points, and we've got 44 currently in the process of being installed as we speak. Now, we were only elected in May, so we're already making huge progress on our promise to deliver 2,000 new electric charging points in the borough. In fact, we're consulting currently, and we've got 161 charging points going through the second phase of traffic management orders. And if all of our consultations have support from local residents, we'll be in a position to install 670 electric vehicle charging points. Now, this will be something, I think, a 250% increase in our rate of rolling out of electric vehicle charging points in the last year. So we've really massively stepped up our game when it comes to electric vehicle charging points. And when you compare us to what the national government is doing, there really is a contrast. So nationally, the government is going to miss its target of 300,000 public charging points by more than 20 years. So they are significantly behind. However, in Ealing, the target that we're supposed to reach, we're going to achieve it 4 years ahead of time and some. So we are massively ahead of government on this. And in fact, London as a whole is ahead of the game. But government really needs to step up and take more action in this area. And I would say, when it comes to the electric vehicle charging point network in the borough, what we are doing is we're trying to ensure that all residents are within 5 minutes of an electric vehicle charging point, so that they're able to walk to one within 5 minutes. I think, you know, when the rollout first started, we were perhaps focusing a lot on areas where people had already bought electric vehicles and the need was higher. And a lot of that was in southern and central areas of the borough. But in the last year, what we've made sure is that range and geographical spread of electric vehicle charging points is much more of a focus for us, because not only do we want to cater for people who already have electric vehicles, we also want to cater to people who are considering getting electric vehicles and need to know that they have that security of electric supply near to where they live. So that's been really successful. This current round has seen the map of electric vehicle charging points in Ealing look really brilliant in terms of the spread across the whole borough. So once we have made sure everyone is within 5 minutes of an electric vehicle charging point, we will then go back to looking at where the need is highest and making sure that anywhere that there is particular strain on chargers, that we're kind of filling in there. I must say that as we've rolled out the charging points more and more, we've had a little bit more response from some residents who are concerned about loss of parking. And that has come up a little bit more in recent weeks. Madam Mayor, I'll just finish on this to say we've worked with local residents to rewrite the letters that we send out that explain frequently asked questions and any issues people might have around parking. We've also looked sometimes at just allowing one dedicated bay rather than two if there's parking stress in the area. So we have very much listened to residents where they have any particular issues. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Costigan. Does anyone from the Labour group have a supplementary question? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can the portfolio holder provide an update on the work the council's doing to address the growing demand for electric vehicle charging points?
Thank you, Councillor. I think I addressed a bit of that in the answer to the previous question, just in terms of the geographical spread. But I'd also say that we are also working with providers on other ideas, such as, I guess they would be, electric vehicle charging point versions of petrol stations. So that's another option I think that's going to come forward in the future. So we are working with some partners on that, and that's a potential that we might bring forward, particularly where you're close to our main roads like the A40, for example. So we are doing work on that. Thank you.
Councillor Glenn to Councillor Manro, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I ask the portfolio holder, please, when was the replacement of Gurnell Leisure Centre first the subject of a cabinet report?
Thank you, Councillor Gallant. The replacement of Gurnell Leisure Centre was first considered by Cabinet in 24th of March of 2015. Now, Madam Mayor, it would be very easy for me to just sit down and simply take my seat to such an easy question that Councillor Gallant could have found out of his own accord if he could have been bothered to actually read cabinet reports or find out what's happening in the borough. But no, they choose to spend their own questions time when they can scrutinize and voice their opinions of their residents to ask an obsolete question. Now, I'm sure that Councillor Gallant has a detailed supplementary question on Gurnell, but I do want to take the opportunity here this evening to highlight the great and significant progress that this administration has made towards bringing forward a feasible, appropriate and sustainable plans for a brand new state-of-the-art leisure centre for the borough. The previous EcoWorld scheme that was rejected while I was chair of the planning committee. In fact, I might note that 2 further members of the cabinet were on the planning committee that rejected it. We rejected that scheme primarily to protect the openness of the metropolitan open land, and because the proposed designs of that development just weren't appropriate for that sort of area. While it re-provisioned the leisure centre, the inclusion of 6 residential blocks totaling 600 units with heights of 12 to 17 stories just wasn't right for the site. In stark contrast, the new scheme that we are in the early stages of designing will comprise of between 200 and 300 homes, around half of what was proposed by EcoWorld. We also anticipate that the heights of the buildings will be significantly scaled back with heights of between 7 and 10 stories. This enabling development will not cover the full cost of the leisure centre, which means that the council will have to borrow money to allow the scheme to proceed. We have reached this stage not only by learning lessons from the failed EcoWorld scheme, but through detailed consultations with our residents. The Gurnell Sounding Board has played a pivotal role in the plan so far, and we are committed to continue to work with the members of the Sounding Board as the project continues to progress. Our values of openness, transparency, and inclusivity are embodied in the work that we are undertaking, and we will continue to work in this way, ensuring that we listen to our residents and local stakeholders through the process. We hope to be in a position to submit planning permission by the end of this year, and I'm extremely proud of the progress we have made so far. While Liz Truss's inflationary crisis has left hundreds of leisure centres across the country at threat of closure, Labour and Ealing are committed to providing a financially and environmentally sustainable leisure centre that will provide the people of this borough with a state of leisure facilities that they deserve for decades to come.
Thank you. Does anyone from the Conservative group have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, give or take just a couple of weeks, which we won't argue about, why has it taken Councillor Munro and his colleagues 8 long years to come up with this current feasibility study?
Are you delaying it for another month?
Thank you, Councillor Gallant. I may point out to you, there's councillors behind you from Pittshanger, and Pittshanger agrees with what we're doing, and so does the Sounding Board. What I would say to him is, look, we have a process in place. We have a process in place which looks at plans through different organs of the council. The planning committee looked at these plans, the EcoWorld scheme, which took many years to come through, and in the end decided they were not suitable. So we have a robust system in place that looks at these issues and makes sure that it's fit for purpose. And yes, it's taken some time, but the leisure centre was open. It only closed later on. But we are now at a process that people are supporting. We've got the Gurnell Sounding Board who've agreed now that the centre can be demolished, and they accept that it can't be re-provisioned, unlike your group that seems to think that we can still redo it or re-provision it and refit it. But they have agreed that. And all I would say is large projects are very risky. And I would say to you very, very clearly that I would not support a project that was not sustainable and financially viable. And I will not do a project rather than take that risk with public money. So we have to make sure the project that we put forward is viable and sustainable, and that's what we will do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Munro. Thank you very much. We will go on item number 9. I call on Councillor Shaw, Chief Whip, to move procedural motion before the debate begins, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the procedure rule 14.5 on the content and length of speech is suspended for this item, allowing each group, the first member from each group to speak for up to 8 minutes.
That's seconded, Madam Mayor.
Before we begin the debate, I would like to move that the standing order 14.4, which relate to standing when addressing the mayor, is suspended. The Councillor Young night. Yeah. So I call the Councillor Stanley to move the budget trustee, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm proud to move this administration's budget proposals for 2023-2024, and I look forward to hearing an interesting and lively debate this evening on International Women's Day. I'm especially proud to serve in a Labour group in which the majority of my colleagues are women, and an administration which is tackling inequality at the heart of its agenda. And digressing for the first time, it's not for me to tell other parties how to organise themselves, but I think it's rather sad that this evening's debate, we are told that every male councillor who's a member of an opposition party will speak, and no women who are members of opposition parties will speak. And I'm sure they have their contribution to make, if allowed to do so. Coming back to my main thread, first, as is right and traditional, I'd like to thank Emily Hill, her team in finance, and officers across the council who've worked hard to put this budget together. As I said, Overview and Scrutiny Committee, budget building's an art as well as a science. There are so many lines to pull together and finally reach a balance. And to produce a work of this quality is to be commended. This budget comes at times which are both uncertain and, in many respects, unprecedented. We may feel now we're in a post-pandemic world, but it's clear that the impact of COVID is very much being felt. It's a time where we face a cost of living crisis, where families are struggling to afford to eat and heat their homes as the price of energy and utilities continues to soar. This situation's worsened by growing and record inflation, now at a 40-year high at well over 10%. You have to be my age really to have experienced this before. The Bank of England has raised interest rates again to the highest for the last 14 years. The pressure on the economy is immense. The country has faced a disaster caused by successive Tory governments, catastrophic economic mismanagement and financial planning. And back in the summer, just when we thought things couldn't get any worse, along came Liz Truss. In her 40-something days in power, she trashed the British economy on a wholly voluntary basis, leaving those of us in local government fearing the worst of what we would be announcing at this time in meetings like this around the country. In the end, with characters having left the scene, come back, departed, ending with the same Secretary of State for DLUHC as we'd had before the chaos began, the outcome was less bad, but let's not kid ourselves that we yet have achieved good news for our sector, which has been systematically starved of funding since 2010. Government projections on what I still call so-called core spending power still assume that local government will raise council tax by the maximum available, including, which is 5%, including the social care precept. And we've also seen, as we've seen before, a shift in the money received through our grants from money being available to spend where we choose and prioritise it to hypothecated spend in specific areas, most particularly social care. And nobody's disputing that social care needs more money, but we cannot starve every other service that local government provides of money. As a responsible administration committed to sound financial planning, looking at our proposed council tax increase this evening, we believe we have no choice but to enact the increase that the government has demanded of us. All across London and the country, the overwhelming majority of councils are taking the same view. This budget supports the council's key priorities, creating good jobs, tackling the climate crisis and fighting inequality. There's over £46 million of direct revenue investment, and much of that investment will be used to protect and support our most vulnerable residents by funding key services. That's why the budget's been designed to deal with inflationary pressures, not just for the year ahead, but those inflationary pressures that could not have been foreseen in the year just gone. And we've gone back to shore up the budgets for those services and to make appropriate provision for the year ahead, knowing as we do the relentless increase in demand and rising costs of social care. It's essential that we respond to the needs of all our residents, and we refuse to ignore the needs of those who are most vulnerable. Social care continues to be the council's largest expense. Roughly 60 pence of every pound we spend goes towards helping adult and children in need. Every year, the pressure grows more and more, and we will not leave those residents behind. But in spite of the challenges we faced, we've still managed to create a budget that protects the poorest and advances our manifesto commitments. Our home care workers are paid the real living wage, and we're on target to deliver the real living wage to everyone who provides a service to this council. We've enabled more people to reduce their environmental impact, as Councillor Costigan's been explaining this evening, and to fight the climate crisis by having generous electric vehicle charge point provision, 70% of residents living within a 5-minute walk of one, and we're well on track to hit our 2000 target. And although we feel compelled to make the increase of 5% this evening, we look to our council tax reduction scheme, which supports 24,000 residents, 14,000 of them receiving a complete 100% reduction. And members will remember that earlier in the year, we improved what is already a market-leading scheme to be even more generous. Looking ahead, we know it'd be foolish to rely on the present government to meet our financial needs as we fight to deliver for residents. Last year, the administration committed to building our reserves by £3.5 million a year to provide us with additional resilience to mitigate any further damage the government might do to the economy. Little did I know when I spoke those words. But that proposal was opposed by the other two parties in this chamber. Although we, along with everyone else, hugely underestimated the potential for reckless incompetence of the Truss government, I hope that this year the Lib Dems and Tories will acknowledge the wisdom of the position that we took. And I confirm tonight that we will again boost reserves by £3.5 million. In the midst of ongoing uncertainty, and with our overall reserve position still below where we would wish to see it, I think this is the only responsible position for the council to take. Madam Mayor, Labour, unlike the Tories, will stand by our manifesto commitments we see in central government. The last manifesto is taken off the shelf and put back on a regular basis, depending on who's in power. But we look forward to the time that we can work in harmony with a Labour government to deliver real and lasting change for our residents and the British people. Until then, we will work tirelessly to protect Ealing residents from the neglect and incompetence of a heartless, cruel Tory government. And I move tonight's budget.
Councillor Mason, please.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I formally second the budget and reserve my right to speak later in the debate.
Thank you. Councillor Basuti, please, opposition spokesperson, only for 8 minutes. Please keep in mind, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. The Liberal Democrat Group are proud to present this budget amendment that we think will enhance the budget that we are debating this evening. The best way to make the budget package better is through considered amendments, which is what the Liberal Democrat Group have produced. There is an opportunity to work in a consensual way to deliver what local people want if councillors from all political stripes are truly willing to consider different and credible offers on the table. We have worked with officers in the Finance Department to produce an amendment that is balanced and realistic. I'd like to thank Emily, Shabana and their team for the time they have given to work with the Liberal Democrat group to ensure that alternative ideas are explored. We recognise that Ealing, as with all local authorities across the UK, have had a challenging time in recent years. The amendment doesn't seek to reduce essential frontline services, nor radically change the budget that is in front of us. But the amendment is to enhance the help available to people in the borough, some of whom are really struggling right now. With the government energy bill support scheme set to end next month and food price inflation at 17%, our amendment is timely and offers a degree of help when other sources of help are being scaled back. It's a travesty in this day and age that people are struggling to maintain a roof over their head. It's a travesty that an increasing number of people are having to use food banks to put food on the table. It is a travesty that some people must make the choice of eating or heating. So our amendment seeks to make cost savings that amount to £200,000 to be placed into the local welfare assistance fund to help people most in need that fall between the gaps in welfare assistance. The amendment seeks to scrap the £50,000 needed for preliminary works and survey work for Warren Farm. I think a great many people have made their voices heard on this issue, along with 20,000 signature petition. Therefore, Warren Farm should be made into a nature reserve at the earliest opportunity and save the council £50,000. The amendment seeks to make savings from the closure and running costs of 2 floors of Percival House, with the remaining functions moved to other floors that will produce a cost reduction of £75,000. The remaining £75,000 made in the reduction of the marketing and communications budget. But sadly, though we proposed the same in the same budget to increase the local welfare assistance fund, the maximum hike in council tax is being put forward once again, compounded by the Tory government and the Labour Mayor of London. The government has literally abandoned social care sector by delaying the social care cap until 2025, effectively kicking the issue into the long grass and expecting hardworking people to fund the rising cost of social care through the social care preset at a time when household budgets are already being squeezed. However, Ealing's not been too stellar in this respect too. It consistently overspends on children's and adult social care in comparison to other boroughs in London, and who seem to do a much better job. Every day we hear from residents about the declining standard of our areas. As residents in our borough continue to pay more, quite rightly, they expect to see direct improvements. Which leads me on to my final point, Madam Mayor. In the not too distant future, there will be a general election, and with it a possibility of a different government. I'm not going to make any predictions on what government will be. Most of you are aware in this chamber that a week is a long time in politics. Regardless, there will be a change of direction, and what needs an urgent change in direction is the way we fund local government in the future. I have written no less than 3 articles on this very subject, and it still astonishes me that a tiny percentage of the overall budget is generated locally. The culture of where councils go cap in hand for different pots of funding needs to end, replaced with a multi-year settlement that supplies sufficient funding for crucial services to plan budgets, manage future risk, and improve resilience of local government. If the current future governments are serious about growing our economy, the opportunities with it, then they need to look no further than local government, who are best placed to understand the needs of our local areas. Madam Mayor, I formally move the Liberal Democrat amendment.
Thank you. Mr. American, please.
Madam Mayor, I formally second the Liberal Democrat amendment, and I reserve my right to speak till later.
Thank you. I will call Mr. Young, please, Councillor Young.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your indulgence in allowing me to sit to deliver my speech tonight. First of all, I'd like to express my appreciation of the work of Emily Hill and her finance team in bringing forward the budget. It is an enormous task, the most important decision in any year, and not made any easier by knowing that as soon as the task has been completed, you have to start it all over again. This year, it has been particularly difficult to predict the big unknowns for the coming year, especially wage settlements and demand for services. Tonight, I want to address the question of government support for this local authority and point out how generous it has been. Core spending power is a measure of the resources available to local authorities to fund service delivery. It sets out the money that has been made available to local authorities through the local government settlement. It includes money raised or received through council tax, business rates, support grants, new homes bonus, and extra funds provided by government. In short, it measures the income of the local authority, and as such, the amount it has to spend. This year, we've had an increase in core spending power of almost 10%. Core spending power increased by 6.8% last year. This means that compounded, core spending power has increased by 17.4% in the past 2 years alone. The year before that, our core spending power increased by 5.2%, and the year before that, 7.6%. In all, in the last 5 years, core spending power has increased by more than 35% in this borough. The last 5 years have been a good time for local authority. Before that, we had austerity because the country had to pay for the previous Labour government's mistakes. The Labour government left this country spending 30% more than it was receiving in tax receipts. But as late as 2002, Britain still had a budget surplus. It took just 8 short years of Labour misrule and overspending before we ended up with Liam Burns' infamous note saying there's no money left. And let us not forget that council tax bills in England doubled during the last Labour government. At the same time, there wasn't a single year when Ealing Council didn't have to make savings in its budget. This council, under the leadership of Julian Bell, embraced austerity and froze council tax for year after year during that time. They were so proud of freezing council tax that they used to proclaim its benefits on banners up and down the Uxbridge Road, saying for how many years the council tax had remained unchanged. This year, we have enough money to fund new revenue growth of 48.6 million. I note that like this year, like he did last year, Councillor Donnelly complains about the financial settlement. But since last year, we've had a mid-year council budget spending increase of £3.1 million. And since the last budget, we've also had a substantial increase in members' allowances, which was obviously a priority for the Labour group after the elections. Both last year and this, we have had the available resources to increase our reserves by £3.5 million, a total of 7 million put into reserves in 2 years. And it's on top of the growth in services, 48.6 million in a single year. But this, Madam Mayor, does not mean that the administration is spending these monies wisely. This administration is spending £7 million more a year on the Greener Ealing contract than we would have done if we'd used an outside contractor. This has gone on for several years, but now we are bringing the parking enforcement officers under the same management at an estimated additional cost of £1 million a year. On top of that, this administration is making a substantial financial commitment to the Percival House development, which is a bad deal if ever I saw one. And even worse, this administration is spending £380,000 a year just to keep Gurnell swimming pool closed. In short, Madam Mayor, this administration knows how to spend money, but this administration does not know how to spend it wisely. I will vote against the budget.
Thank you. He's finishing it. Councillor Young, yes. She's there. Where's she going? She's there. I'm going to see you. 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Today, as the world celebrates International Women's Day, I'd like to celebrate and recognize the incredible contributions of Ealing women councillors. Thank you for your hard work and dedication. Despite the challenges that we face, we are paving the way to a more equitable and inclusive society. Madam Mayor, tonight, as we are putting forward a budget that reflects our Labour values and commitments to Ealing residents, I cannot but ask our fellow Conservatives one simple question. Do you know that you made history? You are the creators of a cost of living crisis that saw people skipping meals and queuing at food banks, and because of your disastrous mistakes and economic incompetence, inflation and interest rates rocketed, creating a housing crisis, leaving people unable to purchase or even rent properties. And while you ran out of ideas, making mistakes after mistakes, we on the other side are stepping up to support our residents. Madam Mayor, as a result of government cuts to local authorities, we have been forced to take the tough decision to raise council tax like many other councils, to try and keep up with our own inflationary pressures brought on by this government's incompetence and to meet rising costs and maintain the current level of services to our constituents. We have been busy delivering our commitments to our hardest hit by the cost of living crisis, while continuing to invest in our residents. We are tackling the housing crisis by investing in the council's housing and have already secured over 1,000 of genuinely affordable homes across the borough. We are committed to reducing health inequality and want to ensure that people from all backgrounds can have a healthy life. That's why we agreed moving forward with redeveloping a state-of-the-art leisure center with a 50-meter swimming pool and have also declared the majority of Foreign Farm a nature reserve while using a small section for much-needed cricket and football pitches. We are tackling race inequalities, violent crime, and antisocial behavior, and have already launched our Violence Against Women and Girls strategy. We launched the cost of living support scheme with a wide range of support available to residents. We are creating more parks, more open spaces, and more trees, and are expanding our popular School Streets program, and many, many more. Our mission is simple. We want the best for our residents and the best for our borough. And finally, Madam Mayor, let us acknowledge one basic truth. It is only Labour who have the ambition, the vision, the courage, and the determination to deliver positive change in Ealing. Madam Mayor, I support this motion.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Kamaljeet Nagpal, please.
Madam Mayor, I welcome this budget and thank Councillor Donnelly, Emily Hill, and all the officers who have done an incredible job in reducing the budget gap in the face of unprecedented inflation and rising demand for our services in the face of a series of Tory-made crises. This is a salient, sensible, and balanced budget that delivers prudent finances whilst also bringing to life our ambitions and visions for the borough that we were re-elected on in May. Throughout the decade of austerity and the 12 years that local authorities have suffered from government cuts and underfunding, Ealing Labour, time and time again, has proven itself more than capable to deliver for residents, putting them at the heart of all we do. Nowhere is this clearer than what we have achieved in our wonderful schools and with our young people. In the last year, we have seen the number of council-run schools rated good or outstanding by Ofsted rise to 97%. We have launched the Cultural Education Partnership, which provides young people with access to art and cultural opportunities, expanding their cultural horizons. We have surpassed our already ambitious targets this year, delivering 50 specialist places to children and young people with complex special educational needs. We've opened brand new additionally resourced provision and expanded capacity in the reception classes, supporting even more pupils. And we continue to lead nationwide in supporting our care leavers, with nearly 1 in 5 going on to enter higher education. These are no small feats by any stretch of the imagination. And Madam Mayor, if we can achieve all of this under a government who not only crushed the pound, who not only destroyed local authorities' budgets for 12 years, and who altogether neglected young people from their policies, just imagine what we will achieve under a functioning Labour government. We know where the additional investment needs to go to support young people in recovering from the pandemic, both in terms of their education and their mental well-being. We know more investment is needed to address the growing demands for additional special educational needs places in mainstream schools, and we know just how to make meaningful and lasting change. The only way is a Labour government, but until we get there, I'm proud to be standing here this evening, supporting this budget and safeguarding our services for another year. until we get the government that we deserve and need. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Councillor Melton, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I commend the Liberal Democrat budget amendment. It gives help or more help to the most vulnerable. It cuts waste and saves Warren Farm. So the question is, you have a question about the right budgets. You may have the right budgets in the right place, in the right departments. However, that does not link to the outcome being improved in many cases. I will focus on one area and one only area alone, that of housing repairs. As a reminder, this year, the regulator of social housing had a self-referral from Ealing Council. Looking at the referral comments, that is quite big stuff. Not just that Ealing had to report itself before it was found out, it still hasn't solved all those problems. Just last week, myself and Councillor Steed have had 3 or 4 or 5 quite serious cases come to our doors. And the first example was an 82-year-old severely disabled lady who was in a council home as a council tenant. Part of her roof collapsed from above her. The council acknowledged the concern initially and made a visit, but then stated it was not an urgent case. She fears now and cannot live in the front room or stay in that front room because it does appear from the photographs that that could collapse at any time. Not too long after that, the council then actually fitted a kitchen that she didn't actually need. She didn't want the kitchen. They fitted a kitchen rather than repairing the roof issues that were highlighted. They reported and fixed that, and then they did a botched job, which meant they had to come back again and again to fix the kitchen, which wasn't really required. Another leaseholder came to me where the contractors and subcontractors had come in and out a number of times to do fire safety doors, which fitted really badly from the photographs that I've been shown. There was no advance notification of these works. The fitters had little or no ID. There was no communication with any of the tenants or leaseholders in that block. These residents do not feel safe, hence them coming to visit me at a surgery. Another tenant reported recently to Councillor Steed, water is pouring through my ceiling. There is a risk of an accident. Half of the ceiling has almost fallen on his head. Now that to me sounds like a severe issue. The council, in all of these examples, appears to ignore or deal very slowly with these serious cases. And they're just the ones that come to us. There are many other councillors in this chamber, and I'm sure there are serious ones that have come to them as well. This council may have sacked some of the repair contractors recently, but many tenants and leaseholders are left at risk. The regulator's comments are very clear in what they were saying. This administration has been here for 13 years, not the 2 that has been stated a number of times recently. And its current leader was a cabinet member covering housing matters for 2 of those 13 years. Why were these issues not dealt with earlier? The Liberal Democrats want to know, when will these problems be stopped so they don't happen again?
Thank you, Mr. Malcolm. Councillor Kelly, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. It's been some years since I've spoken in person in this chamber at full council. Again elected in Greenford in the redrawn ward. I'd like to thank the party members that selected me. I'd like to thank Councillor Harbour-Jan Kaur and Councillor Barlene Alexander for being elected me. You'll be aware that residents yet again in Greenford Broadway continue to elect Labour councillors. There's been a renewal of Labour councillors adding value to debate in this chamber. There's been a renewal in policy and procedures, and this budget is a renewed commitment to those. And in particular, to those that in recent years that have been the front line of service, our care home support workers. Our uplift will give upwards of 1,900 people a direct benefit to £11.05 an hour. 85% of real living wages businesses have seen increased motivation and intention rates. This Labour Council is investing £2 million in our workers. And on International Women's Day, it needs to be noted that 77% of these are women. And 69% of them do live in our borough. I was watching a debate in Parliament today, it's all quite prescient. And Damien Green said in a debate that, yes, a Tory, that they are a hidden army. Thing is, I'm not sure his colleagues have really demonstrated that they agree with this. Our care home workers really didn't have the opportunity to shield and isolate. And whilst the former PM, Mr. Johnson, was partying and the late Queen was mourning, our care workers were working. With this uplift, this Labour Council understand the dignity of their labour in a material way. Unfortunately, this uplift won't really address the recent cost of living crisis. They won't be able to buy tomatoes. They won't be able to buy more than 2 packs of eggs. They won't be able to borrow money so easily, given the costs of borrowing, since Kwasi Kwarteng in lockstep, as the Prime Minister said at the time, what was her name? Lockstep with Kwasi. Despite this challenge, we as a Labour Council continue to build affordable homes as well. And remember, Councillor Young, for every Gordon Brown you mention, I give you Kwasi Kwarteng. Kwasi Kwarteng. Perhaps you showed a bit of humility in mea culpa today because you didn't mention Gordon Brown. Anyway, going back to our commitment to healthy lives and an inclusive economy, I'd like to thank Councillor Blacker and Councillor Donnelly for making this uplift possible. And this group led by Councillor Mason. I know his commitments to residents is resolute. It's residents, these residents in Ealing, we all know, and it's very important given what's going on currently. We all know that residents and this Labour Council will welcome refugees and asylum seekers escaping hunger, war and persecution. That's what this Ealing Labour does. And I thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It is a great pleasure to endorse a prudent, progressive and people-focused budget tonight as one of the record-breaking number of female Ealing Labour councillors on International Women's Day. I am extremely proud that this new Labour administration has placed tackling inequality at the heart of our agenda, delivering transformation change for Ealing residents who has been historically ignored as it was one of the reasons why I wanted to run for office. I am also delighted to support the council's commitment to deliver social, racial justice, eradicate violence against women and girls, and ending educational and health inequality. This is no longer as an inspiration, it is a budget setting principle. I have heard our inefficient public health work in the health scrutiny panel. I would like to congratulate our public health officers, especially the work Ealing Community Partners anti-TB prevention team, especially Abdi Ali, who reached more than 2,000 worshippers on Friday at West London Islamic Centre. Our extended funding cycle for voluntary groups, one of the first actions taken by this administration, means organisations like Ealing Community Transport can have confidence that Ealing Together was just not a slogan, but us to get us through the pandemic. Madam Mayor, my own educational background means I must highlight the work of Ealing educators, parents, peoples who continue to strive every single day to do brilliant things in the toughest of times. I'm also proud that this Labour Council has expanded our School Steps programme, and I look forward to implement St Vincent Primary School scheme in North Acton. The local government information unit estimated yesterday that 90% of councils would take full council tax increase because of the government's undervaluing of the local government. Ealing Council has taken 13 years of tough decisions due to austerity imposed upon us. As the Ealing Labour councillor, we will continue to strive, work hard and deliver for all residents. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Glenn, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Emily and thank you to Shabana for the incredible work they've done on this very difficult document and for briefing the Conservative group as well. It's much appreciated. I think we should all say that. It was lovely actually tonight. I saw Councillor Donnelly come up and with great gravity announce things. And I thought we're onto something new here. When he said, "Well, actually, it was better than expected." And I thought, are we moving on to something new? Yes. But of course, he sank into the usual ideological tirade against the Conservative government, which is doing, for me, is doing a great job. If it's produced that settlement in these times of difficulty, in these times of uncertainty, and we all know what that is post-COVID, and that is the Ukraine war. If it's done that, it's doing a good job. You see, I don't have the ideological constraints that seem to sort of bind our friends over there. You won't hear a pip. You won't hear a pip squeak of criticism from me about the council tax support fund, Ealing's additional £15 on top of the statutory £25, and the council tax reduction scheme is doing a good job in freeing people who often buy without. Well, it's not their fault. They've got into a situation and they're being helped out of it. And that is good. So another thing's good in the budget as well. You drill down. It's good to see pavement licenses not being increased. They're still going to remain at £100, and that will help businesses who are struggling through hard times. What I have a big problem with is if I'm talking to a resident and I'm telling them that your council tax is going up by 5%, all right, 2% social precept, we don't argue about that at all, but the 2.99%, that is council tax. That increase is coming together with a generous settlement from government. And you know what? They're going to put 3.5 million into reserves. And that's the difficulty. That's where it's difficult for me to explain that to a resident. You can call it prudent, but people who are struggling, and Councillor Kelly has outlined the difficulties that people are facing at the moment, which we all know about. When they're struggling with that and £3.5 million is going into reserves, they won't understand it. Finally, Madam Mayor, if I could, I wish there was more ambition to increase revenue from sources that are not grant, business rates or council tax. Look at section 19.1 in the report. No, this is 19.1 in the report, and there's one bland sentence. The capital investment proposal said having this brought for approval in principle reflect the need to make efficient use of the council's property and assets at an affordable cost to support the delivery of council priorities. I mean, that's fine, but you know, when you drill down into it, what about making our commercial waste collection truly competitive? Promoting optional council services such as building certification, improving the food and beverage offer in our parks, paying more attention to our West London film office, working harder to attract major enterprises into the borough. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Very much. Thank you. Councillor Costigan, please.
Madam Mayor, we all know we're living through a cost of living crisis. We can see it in the size of our gas bills, the price of tomatoes, if there's even any left on the shelves, and workers striking for fair pay across the economy. The council is facing similar challenges. Through the roof inflation means resurfacing our roads is going to cost a lot more. We've already had to add over £1 million to the budget to retrofit council homes as the price of materials and labour rises. And we've had to agree higher than expected pay deals with frontline staff. For Ealing residents trying to make ends meet with their household income, the hardest thing to deal with is uncertainty. When the washing machine goes bust and you have to buy a new one, or your hours get cut and you have less money coming in, this is where families fall into crisis. And uncertainty is also a real issue for local councils. We want to build new parks, decarbonise hundreds of council buildings, and massively increase cycle paths and active travel options in our borough. To do this, we need to think years in advance. But all we get from this government is 1 year's funding. Imagine if employers treated our residents like that. Yes, we know you have to provide for your family all week, but we're only going to tell you what we'll pay you for Monday at midnight on Sunday night. And we'll only tell you on Monday night what we'll pay you for Tuesday. How could you even plan family meals for a week, let alone buy new kids' shoes or replace that washing machine? Yet this is the position the government has placed local councils in. It's no wonder so many are having financial difficulties. Now, the reckless and irresponsible decisions taken by this Conservative government has ensured we're the worst performing economy in the G7. But in Ealing, under this Labour administration, we've been careful to be prudent and sensible with our finances. We've put money aside to deal with the unexpected, and we've also invested in the services that are most important to our residents. Where we can work smarter, we're doing this. When we brought our refuse and recycling back in-house, we said once it had bedded in, we look at more efficient ways of providing services. So we're doing that. And we'll be using the new online appointment system at the Refuse and Recycling Centre to take advantage of downtime and to focus more on reuse and diversion from landfill. And yes, I'm delighted we'll be bringing parking back in-house because it makes financial sense. Now, Madam Mayor, I'm not going to spend time on the main opposition party's slightly cynical and virtue signalling amendment, especially as we have the best council tax support scheme in the country, except to say, I assume from their speeches they will be backing the remaining 99.9% of the budget when we vote later. But I note the Conservatives haven't even bothered to come up with an alternative suggestion tonight. It's clear that both locally and nationally, they've run out of ideas. It's painful to watch their desperate attempts to hold on to power at Westminster with the same gimmicks they've been trying and failing with for the last 13 years. They don't have an alternative vision for our country, and they certainly don't have an alternative vision for Ealing. In contrast, Ealing Labour has huge ambitions for our borough, backed by the careful curation of our finances that we need to deliver these ambitions. From installing 4 new school streets this term to kick-starting London's biggest rewilding project at Warren Farm, and from rolling out thousands of electric vehicle charging points to installing 25 new bike hangers this month at the cheapest price in London, we have put the priorities of local people at the heart of this budget, and I therefore support it wholeheartedly.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Newstow.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I welcome this budget because even in the face of the economic meltdown this government has created, this Labour administration will always put the most vulnerable first. This is what drives us, to make lives better for our residents. But we cannot thrive if we feel unsafe on our streets. We cannot thrive if we worry about our children being safe on their way home from school. And we cannot thrive if our police officers are unable to do the real bread and butter policing that makes us all feel safer. We know that our frontline services have stretched to breaking point. The number of community police officers to support us has halved. So what is this Conservative record on crime? We can see it on the streets of Ealing. Fewer neighbourhood officers, fewer specials, arrests halved, less crime solved, more drug taking on the streets, more antisocial behaviour. When was the last time you saw your local police officer on the beat? We know that safety and community matter to the people of Ealing. As a Hanwell councillor, I see how persistent street-level crime wears people down. Car break-ins, parcels stolen from doorsteps, children being mugged in the park, drug dealing on our street corners, street drinking, fly tipping over and over and over again. These are so prevalent that most of the time we don't even bother to report them. We know there is no point, that despite the best efforts of the Met Safer Neighbourhood teams, they can hardly make a dent. 94% of crimes that are reported go uncharged. 94%. We need, and the people of Ealing deserve, properly supported and funded local community policing embedded in our communities to support our work at the council and make Ealing a safer place to live, to thrive, to bring children up, to grow old. We have so many things to be proud of that we have achieved in our first year. I am most proud we prioritise community safety and are making real progress in tackling male violence against women and girls. We're investing in better street lighting and CCTV, tackling misogyny in our schools, as well as fighting burglary, violent crime, and we have maintained our borough-wide prohibition against antisocial behaviour. I commend the portfolio holder. We have brilliant and committed people in the council in our community safety teams, working with residents, community organisations and the police to tackle antisocial behaviour. But we can't do it without the police having the resources they need to support us. without the court systems being built back up and public faith in policing restored. A Labour government will bring thousands of community officers back onto our streets and ensure they're embedded in Ealing and in community knowledge. Together, hand in hand, we will work with the police and the future Labour government to build back trust and make sure we're all safe on our streets and in our homes. And on International Women's Day, it would be remiss of me not to celebrate the passing of the parliamentary bill yesterday to implement safe access zones around abortion clinics in England and Wales, a campaign that was started right here in Ealing by many of the councillors in the room. And thank you to Sister Supporter for making this a reality to help end the harassment of women. Because that's what we do in power. We make life better for everyone that needs it most, not protect those that already have privilege and power. I would like to conclude with a quote, Madam Mayor, if I have time. A quote from Yvette Cooper. Is that time? Well, I'll leave it there then, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Ward, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Mason is always keen to present himself as leading a shiny new administration, which took office a little under 2 years ago and has no connection at all with the discredited Bell era. But one aspect where the continuity is most apparent is in the budget, and especially in the development aspects of the budget. Ealing Council's finances have for many years been underpinned by a year-on-year increase in the council tax base, primarily due to allowing thousands of luxury flats to be built, with this year's increase, despite recovery from the pandemic, being equivalent to almost 3,000 Band D properties, and so being responsible for an additional £4 million of revenue this year alone. And of course, this is cumulative. Every year sees more luxury flats, so every year the base grows again. So this administration being soft on developers, as my colleague Councillor Hirsch mentioned earlier, and encouraging schemes that residents find unacceptable with low affordable housing percentages isn't merely incompetence. The unpopular luxury flats that strain our borough's infrastructure are not merely the price that has to be paid for providing much needed, genuinely affordable homes. This budget simply would not have balanced without them. The new local plan sees a slight change in approach from development of tall towers in North Acton, South Acton, Central Ealing, West Ealing and Southall to slightly lower towers throughout each of the 7 towns of our borough, and de-designating metropolitan open land so that our parks and open spaces can be added to the developers' shopping lists. For many residents, it will make the situation worse rather than better. This administration has resolved to approve many ambitious capital schemes, but failed to deliver most of them, both schemes via Broadway Living and directly. This has provided a windfall in this year as investing the unspent capital returned more interest than it cost to borrow, but that is simply unforeseeable fallout from the disastrous mini budget in the brief but traumatic Liz Truss era. In any normal year, this unspent capital would be costing this council a fortune rather than digging this administration out of a hole. Turning briefly to our amendment, it saves money being wasted in the nearly empty Percival House. It saves money on the administration's propaganda, and it saves money by cancelling the works to destroy Warren Farm as a viable nature reserve, a scheme which is opposed by the 19,983 people who signed the petition when I last checked. So it looks like it'll hit the 20,000 by the end of the meeting. Please support our amendment. The opposition will not be voting for this budget as proposed.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bench, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let me begin by commending officers who have worked so hard to deliver a balanced, wise and sensible budget. What's more, this budget does not compromise on the promises that Ealing Labour made to residents last year. In the face of unprecedented inflation, rising demand for services, and on an even smaller pot of money from central government, this is truly remarkable. I became a councillor in May 2022. Even then, it was impossible to predict the situation that we would find ourselves in now. The worst cost of living crisis for generation, Liz Truss's botched mini budget that wrecked our economy and unprecedented inflation. And yet, while the Prime Minister is too weak to take real action to help working people, it is local councils like Ealing that are picking up the pieces and delivering for communities. And this budget confirms it. Whilst the government dither and delay over the housing crisis, we're building genuinely affordable homes and getting tough on rogue landlords. Whilst the government raised the tax burden to its highest level since World War II, we've extended our council tax support scheme, making it most generous in this country.
And whilst the government delay on their long-awaited plan to fix social care, Ealing Labour have now provided the real living wage to every home care worker in Ealing. Social care is in crisis, yet the Tories shamefully do nothing. Despite the immense challenges facing the social care workforce, the cross-party Health and Social Care Committee and the government has shown a marked reluctance to act decisively. Social care continues to be one of the biggest challenges we face as a council. It continues to be the biggest bill that we pay at Ealing Council, with costs rising each year. And let me be clear, this crisis in social care has not happened by accident. It is the direct result of 13 years of austerity, consistent underfunding of social care, and underinvestment in community health services. I am ashamed that this government and the Prime Minister are too weak to fix a crisis that has defined a generation. I am, however, proud that at Ealing Council, we will go always above and beyond to all residents, going further and faster in our drive, determination and commitment to fix the challenges that face us. That's why, Madam Mayor, I support this motion. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you very much. Councillor Dinesh, please.
As we mark International Women's Day, have I got it on? As we mark International Women's Day in here and around the globe, I unapologetically rework feminist Carol Hirsch's celebrated statement: the personal is as much political as it is economic. In other words, what goes on in the private sphere of the family, households, has everything to do with politics and economy. An assessment carried out by Together Through This Crisis initiative reveals that 1 in 4 households regularly runs out of money for essentials, and voters do not believe the government is doing enough to help. About 40% of people end the month with no money left, while 24% run out of money for essentials, either most months or most days, a survey found. Local authority finances have been struggling for years as a result of austerity cuts. Yet, as we have seen, 2023 is proven to be an unusually difficult year, as highlighted by the Local Government Information Unit, which recently found that councils face increased pressure from soaring and increased demand from residents hit by the cost of living crisis. Ealing, like many other councils, is still grappling with significant challenges in setting our budget and trying to safeguard services from cutbacks due to the deep underlying and existing pressures we face. I too thank the officers for their hard work in reducing the budget shortfall against this backdrop of the economic crisis, while delivering Labour's vision for the borough that we have set out last May. This balanced budget also provides responsible, prudent and balanced finances as part of our commitments to deliver on the pledges we made to the residents of Ealing last year. The council is re-establishing well-paid jobs back to our borough, tackling the climate emergency and combating layers and widespread inequalities that disadvantage families, preventing many from achieving their full potential to live a high quality of life. In fact, 10 months on, we have already delivered the real living wage to all care workers and extended our council's tax support scheme for the households that need it most, making it the most generous in the country. It sees support provided to 24,000 local people, including 14,000 people who will benefit from a full 100% reduction. Additionally, we're doubling up on our efforts to provide generally affordable homes for local people. Yes, we're constructing new homes, tackling rogue landlords and reducing the number of people who are sleeping rough. This is a government, this Labour government demonstrates good government. I'm proud that it's launched our violence against girls and women's strategy and extending active travel. There are undeniable challenges. These are undeniably challenging times, but if difficult decisions aren't taken now, we face an even bleaker future, with central government ever guillotining its local authority funding for a decade, with inflation at about 30-year high due to poor economic government policy, and with a growing number of families requiring support. Extra funding is needed to pay for the shortfall as well as the unexpected. So just to sum up, I'm just going to say, as we mark International Women's Day, I pay homage to every woman here and globally. There is more that unites us than divides us. One blood, because we all bleeds the colour red. And we need a Labour government and we need more women in government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Stafford, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. How do you follow that? That was excellent. Obviously, unfortunately, I will. Of course, the Conservative Group once again accepts the social care precept increase, as social care must be funded appropriately. We don't accept the core council tax increase, and we do accept the Lib Dems amendment. This budget, once again, is one of the most uninspiring, lacking in vision, devoid of priority budgets I've seen for a long time. Despite the massive majority that Labour has got, an impetus for a radical reform of council services is never on the agenda. It's totally wasted. A council that has, for the last 13 years, has run this council and has run out of ideas. And you don't take my word for that, because the council of this year and the coming year will take £7 million from residents and not have a single idea of a new service or an improved service to do with that £7 million they take from residents. They'll shove it in reserves where it'll sit unused and unneeded. Now, I'll be mainly talking about things in my portfolio in the minute and a half or 2 minutes that I've got left. But I was noticed when the council's Pravda sheet came into my letterbox this morning, there was a whole double-page spread on beavers making a comeback. But coming back after 400 years, beavers back to Ealing. And I was thinking, isn't that the height of hypocrisy? When in Warren Farm, this administration is willing to de-wild the skylarks that have come in, but after 400 years, and let's not put aside the fact that 400 years ago, there were 85 households in this borough, there are now 140,000 households in this borough, and the fact that there are no natural predators for the second largest rodent in the whole of the world that they're going to bring in. Putting all of that aside, doesn't this just go to the hypocrisy of this council that likes a big headline, but actually when we could do something a reality to actually keep wildlife like skylarks, they're willing to destroy their habitat. And it's the same with their local plan. They talk a good game about wanting to preserve our environment, but the reality is they're going to de-designate the metropolitan open land to allow developers to build more luxury flats or rabbit hutches for the poorest in our society in the sky, not what residents want, which is building on brownfield land, family affordable homes, or indeed on the Gurnell site. And going to the budget specifically, not content were they to close the Acton Recycling Centre, they're now going to reduce the hours for the Greenford one. While recycling rates in this borough are going down, they're making it harder for residents to recycle. And on a general point, if you are going to raise £4.5 million this year, £4.5 million next year, £9 million of hard-earned taxpayers' money, and put £7 million of that into reserves, that is a disgrace, and it's a waste of residents' money. It should be put on services or not taken from them at all. But we all know what the priority of this administration is: raising councillor salaries, because year in, year out, that's what they do. And I can't turn around to residents with a straight face and say to them that this administration is spending the money wisely or appropriately, and we should vote against this budget. Thank you.
Listening to you. Thank you. Councillor Edison, please. Okay, go ahead. No? Councillor Menro, please. No?
Thanks for that. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Apologies.
His name.
I'm pleased to add my voice in favour of this budget tonight. First, it is worth once again taking a moment to remind ourselves of the circumstances in which this administration finds itself in. Now, of course, others have already made the point that 13 years of Tory austerity and Lib Dem austerity has gradually worn down our public services and our local economies, making it much more difficult for us to unleash our residents' aspirations and talents. But we must also never forget that the Truss Quartering experiment the carnage it wreaked on our residents last autumn. Now, in my day job, I saw firsthand how the global financial markets delivered a devastating verdict on their ideological zealotry and the impact that their decisions had on families and businesses right here in Ealing, especially in my own ward of South Acton. A currency much diminished in the world economy, making everything that we buy in from overseas more expensive, causing prices on food, fuel, and more to rise even faster and to even higher levels than they already were, and the cost of borrowing to soar, seeing renters, homeowners, and business leaders alike. It is that conservative economic incompetence which has led to the choppy waters that this administration finds itself navigating today. And that's why I also want to pay tribute to the council staff and to Councillor Donnelly for the work that they've done over the past few months to not only make sure that our adult social care and children's services meet ever increasing demand, or that we continue investing in the infrastructure critical to our borough's future, be it Gurnell, Warren Farm, or the genuinely affordable homes that families in my own ward so desperately need. But that when parents, like the ones who have been visiting our South Acton surgeries these past few months, including yesterday, worrying about making rent, paying the bills, and just feeding their kids, that we as an Ealing Labour administration can say with pride and resolve that we're providing the most generous council tax support anywhere in Britain, giving a hand up to people who need it most when they need it most. Just as the Conservatives try to pull the rug from under them. That's what Ealing Labour is all about. And that's why, Madam Mayor, I will be proud to vote in favour of this budget this evening.
Thank you very much. Now it's Councillor Menno, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This budget process has not been easy. The inflationary crisis and rising demand for public services caused by over a decade of Tory inaction and incompetence. Local taxpayers have been left with inflation at 10%, energy prices have more than doubled, and there is a cost of living crisis, as we all know. I would first of all like to thank our harder working officers in producing this budget and Councillor Donnelly, ensuring that it's a balanced and prudent while still addressing our council priorities. And we should look wider. We don't want to repeat the financial management mistakes made by other councils. And I'll give you a number of them. Thurrock ran up a deficit of 500 million and lost 275 million on investments into solar energy and other businesses, and they owe millions to other local authorities, Councillor Gallant. So if you are ambitious, maybe you should go to Thurrock and see what you can do with them. Slough declared bankruptcy after finding a black hole in their budget over £100 million. Northampton declared insolvency. Spelthorne borrowed over £1 billion, more than 100 times their core spending power, Councillor Young. So maybe you should go and help them. And Croydon, where the mayor is putting up council tax by 15% to make up for the hundreds of millions that they lost due to years of financial mismanagement. Yes, they're all different boroughs, you know, they're Tory and Conservative. So what I want to say is that we want to make sure that any major projects that we support are sustainable, are feasible financially. And if we do not believe a project meets that 3 criteria, we're not going to put Ealing Council taxpayers' money at risk in order to push ahead. There's always a degree of risk with any capital spending, but we want to mitigate that risk as much as possible to ensure that we can meet our commitments to delivering vital social infrastructure that our residents deserve, and that includes housing, Councillor Ball. We're continuing with our large-scale regeneration projects. The Golf Links Estate project is set across the next 2 phases to help us deliver over 250 more genuinely affordable homes for residents in our borough. And it's one of the many regeneration projects still taking place despite Liz Truss crashing the economy. But every single project that the council undertakes, regardless of its size, has its part to play in my ward, the reprovision of Woodend Library with 11 generally affordable homes built is a small scale project that will have a big impact on 11 families being able to move into council homes. We continue to push forward on our goal of delivering 4,000 generally affordable homes for residents in the borough. And our current delivery forecast for 22-23 is 1,263 genuinely affordable homes. That's those families will go off from the council waiting list into those homes.
Time, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. All I would say is, Councillor Ball, I would talk through some of the stuff around metropolitan open land, but I've already explained that to you. You refuse to understand it, so I can't really thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Steed, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm as much surprised that Councillor Young didn't mention a previous Prime Minister, as I am actually surprised at the fact that Councillor Munro would have the audacity to mention Croydon in the way that he has. But there we go. Context is everything, as they say, and context in everything. And in speaking tonight on the Labour administration's budget, or indeed any local authority's budget, it is impossible to ignore the context of how successive Conservative governments have treated local government and its funding. Thank you. I think we all get copies of the Local Government Association Journal, though maybe we don't read all of it all the time. There is an article in the current edition by the Conservative chair of the Local Government Association. I'm assuming that come May, he may no longer be the chair of the Local Government Association, which succinctly addresses many issues that make local government so difficult, such as the need for long-term certainty in planning, generally in planning budgets, to build more homes with, as I think has probably already been mentioned, 1.2 million people on waiting lists, with over 120,000 dependent homeless children living in temporary accommodation. The Conservative chair of the LGA goes on to refer to the need for £13 billion to address the pressures in adult social care. A separate article in the journal goes into more detail concerning children's social care, where the LGA analysis indicated an existing shortfall of 1.6 billion simply to maintain current service levels. The review of children's social care last year recommended investing at least 2.6 billion over the next 4 years. These are big problems demanding pretty big solutions. The current government's response is feeble. How do we fare in Ealing with building new homes? The council has targets which it strives to meet. It also has money sitting in capital reserves, which seemingly is not able to spend. In the meantime, successive planning committee meetings are cancelled. Is there really nothing to discuss in any possible future planning committee? I've lost count of how many have been cancelled, but no doubt Councillor Munro will remind me what the figure is. My colleague Councillor Bell, over what period of time are you talking about? My colleague Councillor Bell, Councillor Ball raised the issue of the 800,000 at scrutiny, and apparently it's all the fault of the previous finance director. But a debt is still a debt, and it is a very high debt compared to all the other London councils. Meanwhile, Ealing's budgets for adult and children's services form a huge part of the council budget, as we know. Adult care has overspent most years from 2018 to 2019 to date, while children's social care has overspent every year from 2018 to 2019. One can come up with excuses, with good excuses for these overspends, but ultimately, what is the point of setting a budget? If more often than not, you go over budget by £8 to £9 million. The issue is less. The issue is less of what is the money spent on, but why is the budgeting so poor? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mahfouz, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This budget, of course, like any budget, is about the money. And indeed, money has never been on the forefront of so many of our residents' minds as it is now. And why is that? It's all thanks to the Conservative-caused cost of living crisis, continuing to cause concern for constituents across our borough. Thanks to it, we've got a G7 beating levels of inflation. We've got crippling energy costs. Let's not forget, any interest rates are now 40 times the rate they were just 2.5 years ago. 40 times increase in interest rates in that period. We've got a winter of discontent with teachers, nurses, and public sector workers concerned over making ends meet. But let nobody say that this Tory government is not ambitious. Not content with this record, and of course, the one of them breaking UK laws, racking up FPNs whilst sitting at number 10. They are now seeking to break international law and basic human rights as well. Thank goodness then that Ealing residents have a Labour council who is using this budget to be on their side and deliver on the manifesto pledges that they entrusted us to achieve last May. During this cost of living crisis, it is Labour and this budget, Madam Mayor, that have already extended our most progressive council tax support scheme, so a further 6,400 households will benefit with additional discounts. Over 75,000 vouchers have been issued supporting those suffering most from this crisis, including those on free school meals, something that other boroughs, particularly Tory ones, have decided to not do, and that we supported care leavers as well. We're well on our way to achieving our ambitious 10,000 new and well-paid jobs, having already hit a target and supported over 1,600 people into jobs and apprenticeships within the first 9 months of this year. And I'm especially proud of the help that we've provided to over 250 young people and 118 living with a registered disability who are now in work because of our specialist support programs. Over 2,300 qualifications and training program graduations, showing that we're also here to help people skill up for the jobs that they want. We've delivered 4 community hubs, which we've launched around the borough, providing face-to-face support where it's needed most, and secured funding for over £2 million to support businesses in the borough. But Madam Mayor, I've talked about the money. I've talked about the numbers, but let's not forget, this is all about the people. The people we are here to serve. Let me tell you about Gabriella, who wanted to get an apprenticeship, but needed English and maths courses that fitted around her childcare commitments. Thanks to Learn Ealing, she's now well on her way to banking a business admin apprenticeship. Or Jenny, who wanted help building her confidence, used our adult learning services and has now gone on to start an apprenticeship at a local school, doing some amazing work with SEN children. Or Raj, who is in constant pain and unable to work, but thanks to the support of our Community Hubs team, got his benefits sorted, support with his rent arrears, and access to the food bank before gaining additional support to reduce his outgoings.
Thank you, Mayor.
Hands-on support, Madam Mayor, that's what made the world of difference to his life. So, Madam Mayor, tonight I urge colleagues, vote for the investment, vote for vital support, vote to be on the side of our residents, vote in favour of this budget tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As someone said, it's International Women's Day, and neither of the opposition parties are putting a woman up to speak, which I think is a shame. I know the Conservative only got one, so it's not that easy. But certainly with the Liberals, they could have done that. I know one of their new female councillor did ask a question. But despite that, in my long time in the council, I don't remember the Conservatives, when they were in power, ever having a female in charge of finances. And I know one of them, I won't say her name, because I don't want to embarrass her, did want to do it because she was a businesswoman. Her husband was a millionaire. They had a big business, but they wouldn't let her. They let her be deputy leader, they let her be mayor, but they wouldn't let her have finance. But never mind. So maybe you're changing now, and I'm sure you are over time. And Councillor Young does get stuck in the past, I'm afraid. He managed not to say a certain ex-Prime Minister's name, but he still mentioned the gold. He's got that in his head. We can't blame everything on the past. Now we're in a new era. Now, I think Councillor Gallant, as long as Councillor Young, praising the Conservative government for helping us. Well, I think they're a bit mistaken, because why would they be 20% down in the polls if they were so popular helping us all? I think they're making a slight mistake there. Now, people think that Ealing's doing a good job. We are trying our best. We've done a lot to improve housing in this borough, a lot of regeneration, and I think we can be proud of that. Yes, there's some issues which have been referred to be looked at, but nothing's perfect, and we did that ourselves. Now, I think we're doing a good job under difficult circumstances. If we didn't put money in reserves, you'd be screaming at us. With this 10% inflation, it's prudent to put money in reserves because we don't know if it's going to go up again. So it's really important that we do have that to fall back on. And Councillor Young has been around long enough, and Councillor Dear, to the time when we were told off for not having enough money in our reserves. So we're doing the right things now. We're doing lots of good things. What's happening at Warren Farm is a good thing. And that's something that's taken time, but that's a good thing. What's happening at Gurnell will be a good thing. And as Councillor Manrose said quite rightly, you can't do some of those things quickly because you've got to get the capital and you've got to get everything lined up. So I think residents of Ealing would support this budget. Like other members of the council, we must thank the officers because I know what a hard job this is to do. But I don't know where the Liberals are. They seem to be in two little camps. Councillor Bustell and Councillor Malcolm were stuck in micro things. I'm not saying casework isn't important. Of course it is. But I think we need to look at the bigger picture. At least Councillor Baldwin-Steed did that. So maybe you might need to give Councillor Steed back that job, but that's up to you. It's an internal thing. But no, they certainly seem very muddled there in their thinking. So can I commend this budget to you and ask us to vote for it? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Thank you very much. Councillor County, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to pick up on a couple of points. So initially, Councillor Young did highlight earlier the almost £20 million increase in government grants that are coming, and rightly so. A big proportion of that is going to social care. The social care grant going up by almost 8 million compared to last year. In terms of the second point on savings, looking at the savings proposals, especially for next year, there are proposed reductions potentially in street sweeping in some areas of the boroughs. It's going to be more intelligence-led. There's going to be potentially a reduction in hours at the Greenford Refuse Centre, given that's now the only one in the borough, and also look at seasonal deployments of garden waste collection. I know in Hanger Hill, one of the biggest issues that comes to us by email from residents is about the state of our streets and fly tipping, and anything that will actually make it more difficult for residents to access refuse and recycling services, and any reduction, even in parts of the borough that potentially don't have a high footfall, will see a deterioration in our streets. Yeah. The third thing I want to just pick up on some of the points that have been made tonight. I know Councillor Bikini and Costigan talked about the 13 years of mismanagement, but in 2022, which G7 country had the highest growth rate in the G7? The UK. Yes. Since 2010, the UK economy has grown faster than France, Japan, Italy, and on the same level as Germany. Employment rates in the UK are at record high and unemployment nearly at a 50-year low. Yeah. Councillor Nagpal and Councillor Mason talked about aspiration and young people. Well, youth unemployment rate in the UK is lower than almost every other EU country and below the EU average, lower than Italy, France, and Spain. There's a record number of children going into university. The Kickstart programme got 160,000 young people into work. There are more children in good and outstanding schools compared to 2010. And just this week, £2.6 billion was pledged for 33 new special schools to be built across the country, expanding capacity for the most vulnerable children in our borough, in the country, sorry. So let's not, so why would we let facts get in the way of their rhetoric?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Peter Mason, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I start, as is customary, by thanking Councillor Donnelly for moving the budget, Emily Hill and the finance team for preparing what is this administration's second budget. But can I also, Madam Mayor, thank Councillor Lauren Wall
for her service diligently to Cabinet. She steps back at a point in which she rightly needs to focus in other areas. And to Lauren, we say our strength and our fortitude is with you in the months ahead. I would also like to thank all of those speakers today who have been able to demonstrate that the sum of the parts of our Labour group is a group that has a progressive vision for our borough, one in which is packed to the brim with, on International Women's Day, strong women who make such a contribution to this borough. It's the easiest trick in the book, a budget speech by the opposition, to be able to drop into 3-minute speeches, lines and cross-referenced points that fundamentally miss the context in which we present this budget. 12 years of austerity that we have faced as a council, perpetuated by both the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives, that have fundamentally challenged our ability to deliver against the broken markets that we know exist in housing and in social care, at the same time as the challenges in wider society see us face even greater pressures dealing with family breakdown and a society that is aging, made even worse by even more context that was the fundamental mishandling, the shameful mishandling of the COVID pandemic by the Conservative government, and of course, the consequences of the supply chain that has seen us in the context of Brexit. But let us also point to record-breaking levels of inflation that has seen the cost of goods and services provided to this council and then on to our residents fundamentally increase. That is the financial context in which we have to take decisions about how we deliver against our priorities. And we have been very clear. A budget is a means to an end. And that end are the priorities that the people of Ealing elected us to deliver on. Genuinely affordable homes, decent living incomes, and an environment where people can fight climate justice as well as feeling secure and thriving in their own communities. And those are the fundamental things that this budget seeks to achieve through the principles that we set. Number one, we have to fight inflation. We are not only dealing with the pressures of inflation that we will face in the year ahead because of the Liz Truss Conservative government, but we also have to deal with the inflationary pressures that we have experienced over the last year. We have to deliver financial justice for our residents in a cost of living crisis. And that means putting right, ensuring every worker in our contracts and on our books is paid the real living wage. And we have to manage uncertainty as we prepare for a financial cliff edge deliberately designed by the government to give as they always have with one hand whilst they take away with another, expecting the residents of this borough to pay for the fundamental mismanagement of the economy overseen by the Conservatives. And that has taught us a clear lesson that this council will always be prudent and we will always face the future in an increasingly uncertain time where we will make sure that we deliver right by the residents of Ealing. We will not go down the route of the Tory councils that frittered away their finances and took gambles in. Well, let's talk about Spelthorne, gambling £1 billion of public money on assets that they've had to flog. Money that should be in the pockets of the people of those boroughs, but instead is having to pay off toxic assets. We as a council will be financially prudent. We will save when it is hard to make sure that we buffet the people of this borough. The best council tax support scheme that there is in the country is one that is in Ealing. The sum of the parts of this Labour group is one that will deliver for the people of this borough, and the sum of the parts of this budget is one that will prepare us well into the future. I second the motion.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Disco, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's interesting listening to this budget debate, and it takes me back, and just for some of the front bench in front of me here might be helpful to understand why at some points we didn't have a council tax increase, because if we at some point in the past that we'd increased by a penny, we'd have lost multiple millions of pounds in government grant called the council tax freeze grant. So, and then we would have been criticised for actually increasing the council tax. So I just add that because I've said it before, but it wasn't taken and learned. So it might be worth saying it again. And sometimes in teaching, you just have to keep on repeating facts and letting it sink in. So I add that there. And it's amazing how in a budget, it's just taken as read. We increase it for social care precincts. We just increase it. But it's a tantamount demonstration of the failure of the system each and every year that we just take it as read. We have to increase it. There was an oven ready deal, we were told, by a certain former ex Prime Minister on the steps of Downing Street, we were ready to go with. Well, that oven ready deal wasn't even in the mixing bowl. And that was just a financial sticking plaster, which was very quickly ripped away when we had the trust crisis. But the worrying thing was, it was a financial possibility to ease the problem of social cares, but it never really addressed the fundamental issues of how we deliver social care, what social care is, and what's the responsibility of the state, what's the responsibility of the family, how do we have a quality of life? It was just a financial sticking plaster which was whipped away. So time and time again, in budget speeches, we have that same remembrance. And we talk about a lack of ideas. Well, some of our service delivery models are leading edge and models for the whole country. Our children's services, our adult social services, well, they are seen as what you do in social services and children's services and seen as leading edge and have models for how we deliver better services. So that's something we've got to be proud of. And I hear like there's criticism about services not meeting their budgets for children's and adult social services. These are demand-led services. I know I have casework of individuals that will have a cost to the council of probably hundreds of thousands of pounds for individuals with life-curtailing conditions, life-restricting conditions, and we can't predict those, but they have a statutory responsibility. Trying to put that into a budget means it's incredibly difficult. There was a House of Commons report that talked about financial finances for local governments, and it actually says the overall trend for spending power has generally been a decrease until 1920. And then it says, and this is the unexpected benefit, followed by a partial recovery. Partial recovery. That's what we're looking at. In 2023, of local authority spending power, it will be lower in real terms than in 2015-16. And to put that in a London context, we had £500 per person for spending power in 2015. It's now down to £300 in spending power. This is where we are. But we've got a proud tradition here. We've got a Labour councillors that were returned with endorsements. We are taking things forward. We have now got a more resilient budget, and we are taking through this difficult time with a stronger financial resilience. So I move to support the budget.
Thank you very much. The time is nearly 9:30, so we are going to sum up. Can you sum up, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Some people made some valid comments in this debate this evening, Councillor Newstub and Councillor Baines. But the way some people speak as if we're in the middle of a general election, it is good to hear, though, that the cost of living crisis is at the forefront of everybody's minds here. I don't think there's been a speech here where the cost of living crisis hasn't been mentioned. Councillor Stafford, thank you very much for your support for our amendment. However, I think every single year you say that the budget is unimaginative. I've never known a budget, and I don't think you have, that has been imaginative. But I'll reiterate that our amendment is quite innocuous. It's just some extra help for some hard up people in this borough. So I would hopefully hope you would support our amendment.
Thank you very much. And then please sum up, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to everybody. It was indeed a very high quality debate. I'd like to thank, you'll understand, the members of my group who spoke with such passion and insight. And if I pick out today of all days, the women in the group who performed in a way that I think, if the suffragettes have access to YouTube, I think they'll be very heartened that they fought for your right to be here, and it was not in vain. But this is my annual opportunity to play whack-a-mole with opposition contributions. So you'll forgive me if I focus on that. Councillor Young, a specious argument repeated and confounded does not become more valid. But you might wish to explain core spending power to Councillor Gallant, who doesn't understand it at all and who thinks it's additional to the 5% council tax increase, when in fact it represents 60% of the core spending power. So you might wish to pick that up. Some of you, Councillor Steed in particular, might wish to come along to Cabinet or Overview and Scrutiny from time to time to learn some of the points that were being picked up on. The points about reserves are hilarious. I mean, unfortunately, Councillor Steed ran out of time before he could reach his mea culpa from last year, but I kind of felt it and assumed it, so I'll move on from that. But the Tories decided to dig in or double down in the modern parlance. Anybody who was at Overview and Scrutiny will have seen that we are towards the bottom end still of reserves as assessed by SITFA independently, and will have heard both myself and the officer say that we believe that we need to migrate slightly more to the middle and have a more secure position. And if the last 12 months doesn't make somebody think that actually having a slightly more secure amount in the bank is a good idea, I don't really know what catastrophe would move their opinion. A disgrace, they said. And as far as the capital receipts are concerned, this was a cleverly timed tactical move to borrow at historically low rates for specific purposes. It's been explained repeatedly at Cabinet, which is why I commend perhaps the YouTube service would suit Councillor Steed as well. So I won't keep you all here all night. My view, Councillor Bowles, I don't believe we have unpopular luxury flats. I believe we have an insufficient number of affordable, decent standard flats. And that's what this administration stands to try to correct in the face of a completely indifferent government. So thank you for all of your contributions tonight, whichever part of the chamber you may have made them from, and I continue to commend the proposal without the amendment, which the Conservatives are going to vote for and then vote against the budget anyway, so I'm not quite sure what that's about.
It is now 9:30 p.m. So do members wish to continue the meeting for another half an hour? Now. So please, there has been an amendments made to the budget. As this is the budget meeting, we must have a recorded vote on budget matters. Therefore, we will undertake a recorded vote on the amendments and then on the motion. The Chief Executive will read out the name of each councillor, and you should state whether you vote for or against and abstain from the vote. We will start with the amendments.
Councillor Shaw.
Against.
Councillor Mason.
Against.
Councillor Costigan.
Against.
Councillor Mahfouz.
Against.
Councillor Manro.
Against.
Councillor Donnelly.
Against.
Councillor Kamaljit Nagpal.
Against.
Councillor Raza.
Against.
Councillor Blacker.
Against.
Councillor Gordon.
Against.
Councillor Newstub,
Against.
Councillor R Wall,
Against.
Councillor Kelly,
Against.
Councillor L Wall,
Against.
Councillor Summers,
Against.
Councillor Rice,
Against.
Councillor Ahmed,
Against.
Councillor Mahmood,
Against.
Councillor Brett,
Against.
Councillor Deer.
Against.
Councillor Ranjit Deer, apologies. On my list.
Harbhajan.
Against, Madam Mayor.
Apologies. Councillor Khan,
Against.
Councillor Ahmed,
Against.
Councillor Sharma, Councillor Rai, Councillor P Anand,
Against.
Councillor Kaur Deer,
Against.
Councillor Johnson,
Against.
Councillor Mohan,
Against.
Am I out of sync? Apologies.
I
Uh,
was called twice.
I'll try. Carry on. Carry on. Councillor Jammu. Not sorry, apologies. Councillor Iqbal,
Against.
Councillor Mataza,
Against.
Councillor Sidhu,
Against.
Councillor Martin, Councillor Kay Crawford, Councillor Dinter, Councillor Anderson,
Against.
Councillor Haley,
Against.
Councillor D Crawford, Councillor Jassel,
Against.
Councillor Kingston,
Against.
Councillor Hamidi,
Against.
Councillor Kwanzaa,
Against.
Councillor Baines, Councillor Mohammed,
Against.
Councillor Padda,
Against.
Councillor Kim Nagpal,
Against.
Councillor Driscoll,
Against.
Councillor D Martin, Councillor Backlini,
Against.
Councillor Wesson,
Against.
Councillor Gallant,
For.
Councillor Kumar,
For.
Councillor Conti,
For.
Councillor Young,
For.
Councillor Stafford,
For.
Councillor Ball, Councillor Hirsch, Councillor Malcolm, Councillor Steed, Councillor Busuttil, Deputy Mayor, Mayor. Deputy Mayor, Mayor.
Excuse me, you've not let someone vote over here.
Sorry? Mr. Khan.
Councillor Khan.
Against.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was waiting
Mayor.
for his answer.
Yes.
Anyone left?
No, no. No, no, no. Amendment of their law.
So
Okay.
the amendment is therefore lost.
Go to the voting motion. So go again.
So again, we will now go to the vote on the motion.
Yeah. Councillor Shaw,
For.
Councillor Mason,
For.
Councillor Costigan,
4.
Councillor Mahfouz,
For.
Councillor Manro, Councillor Donnelly,
For.
Councillor Kamaljit Nagpal,
4.
Councillor Raza,
4.
Councillor Blacker,
For.
Councillor Gordon,
For.
Councillor Newstub,
4.
Councillor R Wall,
For.
Councillor Kelly.
4.
Councillor Elwall.
4.
Councillor Summers.
4.
Councillor Rice.
4.
Councillor Ahmed.
4.
Councillor Mahmood.
4.
Councillor Brett.
4.
Councillor Ranjit Deer.
4.
Councillor Sarfraz Khan.
4.
Councillor Ahmed.
4.
Councillor Councillor Sharma. Councillor Rai. Councillor P. Anand.
4.
Councillor Kaur Deer. Councillor Johnson. Councillor Mohan.
4.
Councillor Jammu. Oh, excuse me, Councillor Iqbal.
4.
Councillor Mataza.
4.
Councillor Sidhu.
4.
Councillor J. Martin.
4.
Councillor K. Crawford. Councillor Dinser. Councillor Anderson. Councillor Haley. Councillor D. Crawford. Councillor Jassal.
4.
Councillor Kingston.
4.
Councillor Hamidi.
4.
Councillor Kwanzaa.
4.
Councillor Baines. Councillor Mohammed.
4.
Councillor Padda. Councillor King Nagpal. Councillor Driscoll.
4.
Councillor D. Martin. Councillor Backlini.
4.
Councillor Wesson. 4. Councillor Gallant.
Against.
Councillor Kumar.
Against.
Councillor Conti.
Against.
Councillor Young.
Against.
Councillor Stafford.
Against.
Councillor Ball.
Against.
Councillor Hirsch.
Against.
Councillor Malcolm.
Against.
Councillor Steed. Councillor Busuttil. Deputy Mayor.
4.
Mayor.
4.
4.
The motion is therefore carried. Thank you. Is this 2023 and 24 members allowances schemes moved? It is second or it is agreed?
I move it. And seconded.
No, there is a possible. Can go there.
It's the same as a meeting.
Yes.
It's the same. The Conservatives want to vote on it. So we just need to go to the vote.
No.
So it's been made. Just all those in favour.
So it means all in favor today.
No,
No, no.
All those in favour.
You can explain.
No, just say all those against.
All are against, not vote again. Not all against.
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 Show hands. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and for,
For those.
yeah, that's good.
Any abstentions? Any abstentions?
Any extension? No, no.
Carried.
So the motion is carried. Thank you. I shut up all the time. It's 2.5 hours, you know, is effect. Feeling hungry. Are the recommendations moved? Are the recommendations second? Are they agreed? Thank you. So we'll go on item 12. Appointment to the committees and other bodies. There are no appointments to committees and only bodies. And there were no urgent key to decision exemption from call-in. Is there a cabinet portfolio update noted? That includes the meetings. Before you go, please sit. I will say congratulations all the girls. They are working very hard. Today is Women International Day, including myself. I'm proud of myself. I'm here today because you support me, all the girls. I hope you'll support me in the future. The other thing is that it's a good news. It's a sad might be. Mr. Kamaljeet Insa, he gave me 150 pounds for my charity. I'm very grateful to Paji. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, can you give it a big hand, please? Now you can enjoy the food and the drink. I'm also starving. Thank you.